Hello, friends, and welcome into Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is the Week 10 ranking show. That's right, double digits. We have officially hit post-trade deadline. We've got it all here. I'm Chris Welsh. That is Pat Fitzmaurice. And joining the rank show this week, Jacob Gibbs here from CBS. It should be a good one. Mr. Pat Fitzmaurice, how are you post-trade deadline? Good, bad, indifferent. I guess at least there were trades. We didn't have any big, massive one. How are you feeling post-trade deadline?
Yeah, nothing big. Mike Williams, maybe this can resuscitate his fantasy value a little bit, although probably not startable, but at least rosterable, I would think. And, nothing else really of consequence. I don't think Khalil Herbert is going to have much of an impact on the Bengals. Just kind of solidifies Chase Brown's grasp on the lead back role there. So, just kind of a nothing burger.
Yeah, I mean, if we put it as a whole, and we look at all the trades, we can see the impact. Jacob, by the way, welcome to the show. Great to have you on here. Anything from the trade deadline you think that's going to have like any effect whatsoever from a rank perspective? I know Mike Williams might be maybe the most obvious. Khalil Herbert being traded has a couple people, their excitement may be up that there's something, but was there anything from the trade deadline that you think impacts ranks at all?
I don't think so. I am a huge Khalil Herbert fan as an individual player and a talent for what it's worth, but I think he kind of profiles similarly to Chase Brown and being like an early downs guy. So I don't know if it really changes anything.
Yeah, I felt like one guy I was speculating out there was like if Raheem Mostert had been traded, I felt like if he would have gone to the Cowboys or the Bengals, that would have been a different look type of back. But at the end of the day, Khalil Herbert, does kind of mirror Chase Brown a bit. And Mike Williams is a good jump up, get it ball. But you know what happens with a lot of these trade deadlines, especially in other sports? All the fun happens quite a few days before the trade deadline. All the big trades ended up happening. And from the Deontay Johnsons to the DeAndre Hopkins, how will they affect the ranks this week? Well, we are going to talk about all of that. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. And you know what we love to do? We love to give you guys stuff. That's right. It's always about the stuff. And guess what? That Justin Jefferson Vikings helmet giveaway, well, we've got a winner. The winner of the signed Justin Jefferson Vikings helmet giveaway is Chris. Is it me? It literally just says Chris. That's me, but I don't think it's me. So we'll be contacting you, Chris, to get you that prize. So stay on the lookout. Congratulations again on Chris. The funniest winner I've ever received. It just says Chris. Like, okay, it could be anybody. But one specific winner is going to win a Josh Allen Bills helmet. That's right. We've got the giveaway, and this is your chance to win an autographed Josh Allen Bills helmet for free, courtesy of our friends over at pristineauction.com. All you got to do is go to fantasypros.com/contest, complete the form, and then you can do a bunch of either's. Download the Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard app, leave a review for the podcast, follow us on X, Instagram, or TikTok on Fantasy Pros. But you can also do all of the above instead of an either, because the more that you do, the more entries, the more actual entries you will receive in this contest. So we'll be announcing a winner just like we did with Chris right here on the podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up, and maybe you can win that Josh Allen Bills helmet giveaway. Pat, I do have sad news. Last week, we were able to celebrate me a little bit and Mick and Bogman on the ranks. Unfortunately, we won't be doing that this week. I did not make the top 3 or 5 or 10 on the ranks contest, but giving a shout out to the week 9 rank contest winners. Kyle Cunningham Rhodes ended up with the number 1 spot in the week 9 ranks. Nick Zylak, I believe is how you say it, Fantasy Football Advice, was number 2. And Aliza Twerski, I believe Twerski was on here before, wasn't he, Pat?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
From
Eli.
Eli. That's right. Eli Twerski from USA Today, number 3 in the ranks, with a special shout out to my buddy Tom Strachan, who I do the Sunday advice streams right before kickoff. He finished 14th, and Mike Mayer. Mike Mayer did it again, Pat, with a 17, a top 20. I got to say, I think Mike Mayer is like right there in the ranks contest. He might be one of the highest here. So maybe next year we're going to have to put him to work and get him on the show, Pat.
Yes, he is top 10. And hats off to our colleague, Mike Mayer.
We hate around these parts to give Mike like any accolades or positive reinforcement. We're not really about that with Mike. So
grudging acknowledgement at best.
Yeah. From the top of the company, by the way. The president down. We're all like, oh, Mike did it? All right, well, no, but congratulations to Mike. And if you guys want to follow along today with the ranks, go to fantasypros.com/rankings. You guys can see all of the movement throughout the week for all of the great rankers, near 200, Jacob, Pat, myself, and tons more. It adjusts as the week goes on. So, gentlemen, let's kick off the rank show. Let's talk running back ranks. We are going to be going through the 3 tiers of them. We've got good visuals on the board. So let's kick it off looking at the big board for running back ranks for week 10. Saquon Barkley is our top dog. We got Derrick Henry, Bijan, Kyron, and Devon Acham. That's your top 5. Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, Aaron Jones, and DeAndre Swift coming in at 12. So these are the top dogs, not a ton of questions, but there's a little bit of dissent here as you guys both are lower than consensus on RB1 DeAndre Swift. Jacob, you've got him at 13. Pat, you've got him at 16. Let's start with Jacob, though. Let's get your take. Again, we are talking about RB1s, but if you're looking at these RB1s, there's a little like one of these is not like the others. And I think a lot of people feel like that with Swift. You're not crazy lower than ECR. But Jacob, what's your gauge on DeAndre Swift for week 10?
Yeah, the one running back I have above him, the consensus doesn't, is James Cook. Well, actually, and Christian McCaffrey, we're going to get to him too. Just more upside, I think, with those guys, with their offense, higher implied totals from Vegas. The Bears, it's kind of rough out here. Obviously, everybody knows that. On the good side for Swift, the usage has been spectacular. He's running back 6 in expected fantasy points per game over his past 4 games. That's per fantasypointsdata.com. He's running back 14 in XFP on the year. And so I think that's about the range he sits most weeks, all things equal. And that's about where I'm at here. And I think it is even maybe a positive matchup for the past 5 offenses to face the Patriots have posted a pass rate over expectation well below 0, meaning that these teams are running the ball much more than expected. And that's based off like the circumstances of each individual play going into the play, which, you'd expect teams to run against the Patriots because they're normally winning. Even still, these offenses have been running way more than expected. And so I think that's good for Swift here. And, we just saw Tony Pollard go for 150 yards against this defense.
Yeah. And one of the things we see here too, on the Fantasy Pros rankings page, we do the matchup ratings. DeAndre Swift is actually the only B rating of all of those, which is kind of ironic. He's the B+ rating. Everybody else has an A rating, but it is a 4-star matchup. So I think that is about the running back. But Khalil Herbert is out of there, Pat, yet you went lower. You're 16 on DeAndre Swift right now. So talk us through what does not have you excited about Swift this week.
The Bears in general. This is sort of a blanket fade of the Chicago Bears for me this week. DJ Moore was being interviewed on a Chicago sports radio station this week and was asked if the Bears head coach, Matt Eberflus, had lost the locker room. And his answer was, I won't say no. That is what DJ Moore told a Chicago sports radio station. And Moore walked off the field in the middle of a play last week. And I know he had stepped out of bounds, and there was the defense that maybe since he was ineligible to be a receiver on that play anyway, that was the smart thing to do. But I mean, he turned his back to the field and walked off. And he also gave this kind of weird, shoulder bump to Caleb Williams.
I was going to ask if that radio station asked him about that, because that's what publicly got all of the, just the fervor. I kind of thought legitimately that the team might have looked at trading him at the deadline. Obviously they did not, but he seems to be an issue right now. Did they ask about the shoulder bump?
I don't know. I saw the clip of the blurb, question about Eberflus, and that was it. But we saw how the Bears have responded to the Hail Mary loss to Washington 2 weeks ago. They got thumped by the Cardinals. That's how they responded. So Swift, we're happy with the usage. I mean, didn't do much as a runner last week, 16 carries for 51 yards, but he did salvage his fantasy day with 6 catches for 31 yards. I know the home matchup against New England does look tasty, but I am just treading lightly around all members of the Bears. And I think you're starting Swift in fantasy, but I know I'm not going to put him in any DFS lineups this week, and I'm not betting the over on any of his player props.
Yeah, it's a messy situation with the Bears. The only positive that you could have really thrown into this outside of just like what his individual performance would look like is Khalil Herbert is gone. That's one, less person to potentially take away. But what does that really end up looking like?
Yeah, he wasn't. They had relegated him to obscurity anyway. So
yeah, let's jump over because, like I said, it's pretty core here. I don't think there's anything crazy, especially with Swift being. I would look at it as like maybe the only outlier of the RB1s. When we go over to the RB2s. Going to the big board, James Cook comes in at 13, Christian McCaffrey at 14, Tyrone Tracy at 15, Kareem Hunt, James Conner, J.K. Dobbins, Chase Brown, David Montgomery. Coming in at 21 is Chuba Hubbard, Najee Harris, Tony Pollard, and Rhamondre Stevenson. Boy, we have not talked about Christian McCaffrey on any rank in a long time. And we're doing it here, and we're doing it outside of the top 12. He comes in at 14. Funny enough, he is actually given an A rating. He's the only running back that is given the A matchup, or I guess it is the start-sit A rating that's in the RB2s. So the start here, Pat, let's go to you real quick on Christian McCaffrey. When we look at your guys' rank, Fitz, you've got him at 10, and Jacob's got him at 9. So you guys are pushed above what ECR is right now. Pat, do you think this rank is relative to people's concerns that he has not been said 100% he's going to go and start and people are holding back? And B, if it is not, what do you think is holding people back from thinking Christian McCaffrey is just going to go ham on return? Maybe slight downtick in touches and they want to baby him. Like what do you think pushes him outside of the top 10?
The ambiguity of the touch outlook for him in his first game back. I think without question. And by the way, congratulations to all the Christian McCaffrey 101 drafters who, if you're not sitting at 2-7, if you're still in this thing, you finally get your shiny new toy. I think if McCaffrey is truly healthy and ready to go, and really as essential as he is to the 49ers aspirations to get back to the Super Bowl, I have a hard time believing they would put him back out onto the field if he wasn't completely healthy and ready to go. So granted, I'm not expecting him to get 25 touches this week, but I think 15 to 20 is a pretty reasonable expectation. That's sort of what I'm basing my ranking on. Give one of the 3 or 4 best running backs in the league 15 to 20 touches, and that's a top 10 running back for me. Yeah,
Jacob, you're a little bit higher. And I look at this and I just go, he's the best running, essentially. Maybe there's more argument now, but it's like he's the best 1, 2, or 3, top 3 running back in the league. He's back. The only thing that can hold him back is if we think he is going to be held back on touches here. But sky feels like the limit here. But let's get your take on Christian McCaffrey. And like Pat said, a player that the 49ers need desperately, because every win and every game for the 49ers is a must win moving forward.
Exactly. It's go time. The Niners have said week 10 all along. All indications are good coming out of the bye. This seems like the plan. So as long as there's no setbacks, I would expect him to assume most of his usual role. And the Niners have the second highest implied total this week, 28 points. So they're expected to put up a ton of points.
Do you think there's going to be any holdback of some of his touches, like that we do see maybe 75% of production? Because I still don't, I'm not even sure if 75% of his production could have him outside of the top 5, if we're being honest.
Right. Yeah. If we knew he had his full role, he'd probably be a top 5 running back. Yeah, I would have him at running back 3 or 4 right there with Kyron and Bijan Robinson. So I'm expecting maybe a little bit, but it's mostly just the ambiguity is the reason he's not there. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he does have that role.
Be on the lookout for it. That's a perfect example of a player to keep on watch, because he might be moving up and up as we start to get some information. If they say, yes, he is this, or yes, he is going to have this type of a snap count holdback. Like those are the things that are going to move the rank. But it's Christian McCaffrey. I think the ECR is going to move up, and his window is probably somewhere between 12 and 4 this week of ranks as it moves on. Next up on the RB3s, Rhamondre Stevenson. This is a very interesting one. ECR 24. You guys have a sandwich here, because I believe, Jacob, you've got him at 25. Fitch, you've got him at 23. He's kind of inconsistent. He is kind of the guy there. Jacob, let's get your take. You do not have him as an RB2, but we're not picking too much because he's 25 for you. What's your take on Rhamondre Stevenson this week?
I don't have a whole lot to add on Rhamondre. I'm curious to hear what Pat has. Just generally speaking, it's tough to bet on any Patriots. I do like Drake May just because he brings some, fantasy football cheat code goodness with his running. But for me, even with the great usage for Rhamondre, you're kind of having to bet on touchdowns for him to get there. for fantasy, and his team's only implied for like 15 or 16 points every week. That's the case again this week.
It's been a big problem I've had, Pat, with Rhamondre is first off inconsistencies, and second off, like, I think you mentioned this before, but it's like a team that is most likely playing from behind in a lot of elements is not looking to establish big amounts of running, though Drake May has made this team better. You've got him at 23, so you do have him in the RB2 territory. What say you on Rhamondre?
Yeah, maybe I'm not being consistent here, because if I am predicting a Bears collapse, then I should probably have Rhamondre above consensus and not below. And certainly the Bears' run defense is not really what's scaring me off Rhamondre. It's 30th in DVOA. What makes me nervous is that over his last 3 games, Rhamondre is averaging 2.2 yards per carry. And he had a tough matchup against the Titans last week. No denying that. 10 carries for 16 yards. But he was also under 3 yards per carry against the Jets and Jaguars, who are not exactly daunting matchups for running backs. Rhamondre has scored 4 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks, but he is struggling to consistently pick up yardage behind a Patriots offensive line that ranks 32nd in run blocking, according to PFF.
Wild numbers in general for him, and he has become just a tiny bit dodgy. This is an interesting one because this running back, Tony Pollard, RB23, as a sell candidate on the buy, sell, hold show this week. And obviously he has been phenomenal this year, but I let Coach Speak get into me a little bit. At holds a tiny bit. They said they want to lower the usage. Also, not a great team. And, maybe Rudolph is going to move the offense a little bit more. But if you're telling me this offense, who's going to be playing from behind, is going to take touches away from Tony Pollard, seems kind of like a sell high territory. But this is not the buy, sell, trade show. This is the rank 'em and play 'em this week. Tony Pollard is 23 on this list. Jacob, you actually have him at ECR. Fitz, you've got him a little bit higher. So Fitz, let's just jump to you real quick. You've got him at 19. Are you afraid we're going to see anything taken away? And frankly, from how he's performed, it feels like he should be higher. He's just not getting into that range. What's your take on Tony Pollard this week?
Well, my fears about Tony Pollard were mostly last week when there were doubts about whether he was going to be able to play at all. With his foot injury, not only did he play, but a season-high 28 carries for 128 yards, also 3 catches for 26 yards. So over his last 5 games, Tony Pollard is averaging 106.4 yards per game from scrimmage. He's had at least 2 catches in every game this season. They are just leaning into the Tony Pollard usage. Like, that is now the Titans' offensive identity. And I know this is a tough matchup against a Chargers defense that has allowed the second fewest fantasy points to running backs, but Pollard really has become a true workhorse, and I think a mid-range running back 2 ranking for him is pretty reasonable.
Jacob, what's your gauge and what's your take on Tony Pollard? Of the top 24 running backs we have here listed on FantasyPros, or at least our top 24, Tony Pollard is given the worst matchup rating of all top 24. Another reason against the Chargers why he's got pushed down. Week 10, Tony Pollard, what say you?
Yeah, only one running back has topped 70 yards against the Chargers. It's been a brutal matchup. And then you look at Vegas implied totals, the Titans sit at 15 points. They're the only team below the Patriots in week 10. So on paper, everything is brutal. And like you, I do think he might be a sell long-term, and that could start coming into effect in the weekly matchups and the weekly usage. 48 rushes over 50 touches over the past 2 games is just a lot for anybody, especially Tony Pollard. And he had a week 5 bye, so he's got to go 12 weeks straight or something, sustaining health. And it wouldn't surprise me if they do try to help him out in that and stop just putting so much on his plate, because it's a lot for anybody to handle.
It's kind of tough when they say hey, we want him to touch the ball less after he had 28 touches. So it's okay, do you want less than the 28? That's still amazing. Or is this a general statement? Because if it goes from, 19 down to 14 carries, okay, that's not good. But if it goes from 28 down to 22, we can still live completely fine. But you take that. And then and Chestnut looked pretty decent over the weekend as well, just, in a run or 2 that I saw. You take that and then you put it against one of the worst matchups. It doesn't feel super great for this week. I would tell you at 23, this is the land of pivoting. that you could probably start to do. Like I don't even right above him on ECR with Najee and Chuba. I'm really not sure I'm getting cute with a lot of stuff. And I know it sounds weird to do with Pollard, but this might be the line of the Pollard and Rhamondres where you start to look and you say, well, if I got something else special in here, maybe I can pivot. Maybe someone did want to mess with Rico Dowdle, who we're going to end up talking about. We got RB3s or slash flexes coming up here in 1 second. But first, the NFL season is rolling along and the contenders are separating from the pack. The one thing that hasn't changed this season, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, is the number one place to bet touchdowns. Fade to the corner of the end zone. Running back breaks through the line and gallops 60 yards to score. We do not care how they get them. We want to bet them. And DraftKings is the place to do it. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player scoring a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick today. Touchdowns are starting to roll out. You get Aaron Jones for the Minnesota Vikings at -110 right now. And I suggest you bookmark and make sure you're checking the DK app throughout the week for whatever the Christian McCaffrey number is going to look like, because whatever it is, I'm taking it 100%. Here's the reason for new customers to do a touchdown dance of their own. Bet $5. You can get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FantasyPros. That's code FantasyPros for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. RBs 25 through 36. We start with Rico Dowdle, Rachaad White, Brian Robinson, Bucky Irving, Javonte, and Tank. That rounds out your top 30. Raheem Mostert, Austin Eckler, Tyler Algier, Travis Etienne, Jalen Warren, and Ray Davis. That's going to be a fun one. Let's start with Rico Dowdle, who I just talked about. Rico has the Philadelphia Eagles. For some reason, I was about to say the Phillies. Baseball's still on the mind. 4-star matchup, but C+ rating here. Rico is 25. Fitz, you got him at 25 as well. But Jacob, you got him at 27. So let's get your take on Rico Dowdle being the guy. We've heard nothing about Ezekiel Elliott. I would expect him to not play nor take anything away. We're kind of into an open season of Rico Dowdle having this, and the team did not go acquire anybody. That's what I thought could have been kind of tricky to this situation. Rico seems like one of those guys that could go higher. But Jacob, what say you on Rico Dowdle? Because you are a few spots lower.
Yeah, we've seen this Fangio defense really shape up lately, and I do think it takes some time for it to come together for his defenses. They've been really, really good against the run. Past few running backs to face him have topped out at 24, 32, 23, 43, 49, and 49 rushing yards. So we haven't had any running back top 50 yards since week 3 on the ground. I'm not a huge Rico Dowdle believer either. And the offense, I don't think is going to be very functional without the QB and the wide receiver 1. They're sitting at 17 as an implied point total for this week. So if you can avoid Rico, I would.
In the projected points, it's another thing you can see on the ranks here. Rico is one of the final 2. So there's technically in the RBs, Pat, there are only 26 backs that are projected to have double-digit scoring in half PPR this week. Rico is number 25 at 11.8 against the Eagles in this divisional matchup. Pat, what say you? I think you said you have him like right at consensus rank here. Do you think he's a tier difference away from Tony Pollard as well? Just kind of bridging that conversation again. Do you think like they are a complete tier difference, or do you think it's close?
I think there's a teardrop from Tony Pollard to Rico Dowdle. And, this is kind of a push-pull situation. When Jacob mentioned that the Patriots and Titans have the lowest implied team point totals for this week, I was kind of surprised that Dallas is above those guys, and kind of a good reminder that I need to go and bet the team under for Dallas this week. With Ezekiel Elliott held out last week, we did see something close to workhorse usage for Dowdle. A season high 71% snap share, 17 touches, 107 yards from scrimmage. Also had that fun juggling touchdown catch that, until Saquon Barkley had his great crazy Mario Brothers leap, Rico's touchdown catch would have been the highlight of the week. But Saquon pretty much relegated that highlight to the dustbin. But you would think the Cowboys would be ready to turn this backfield over to Rico by now with what, Ezekiel Elliott and Dalvin Cook have not been able to do for the Cowboys. On the other hand, yeah, this is a much less potent offense with Cooper Rush at quarterback instead of Dak Prescott. So it's going to mean fewer touchdowns, maybe fewer plays if Dallas can't sustain drives. So workhorse usage perhaps, but it might be sort of empty volume.
You know those videos you can watch online? It's like you watch people react to the first time they've heard something, those reaction videos. I could watch his teammates, Saquon Barkley's, by the way, to that play. There's a video out there of his teammates seeing him do the backwards jump. I could watch 4,000 of those all day long. It was one of the most spectacular plays, and it was just like greatest 14-yard gain in NFL history. It felt like just watching everybody was phenomenal. I know it was more about Rico here, but had to talk about that Saquon broken tackle. Let's talk about the Bucs situation. Bucky Irving comes in here at 28. This is like the weekly Bucs Rachaad White versus Bucky Irving conversation, and Rachaad White keeps holding his value. That's what I think is a testament here too, is like, this has not happened. Bucky Irving is clearly just the better runner, and he's the guy that they want between the tackles. But Rachaad White gets the touchdowns, keeps rolling. Rachaad White comes in at 26 this week against the 49ers. Bucky Irving, though, at 28. There seems to be a head situation. 49ers you kind of can run on them. There's been a thing you've been able to do this year, but Rachaad White still holds it. Pat, what say you about Bucky? I'm turning this into kind of both of the guys. A, Bucky Irving, but B, Rachaad White, and them battling out their ranks, because you do have Bucky Irving at 26. Do you have him higher than Rachaad White?
Yeah, like one spot.
Okay.
So our colleague Sam Hoppen does a terrific weekly article looking at usage trends. And, he points out that the Buccaneers running back usage has been pretty fantasy friendly in recent weeks. And, both running backs, Irving and Rachaad White, have averaged around 5.3 high value touches per game. And we want those valuable high value touches, carries close to the goal line, pass receptions. And Bucky's passing game usage has been up, and it makes sense that the Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield are leaning more on the running backs in the passing game without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So, the Tampa Bay running backs had a rough go of it against the Chiefs on Monday, but pretty much every running back has a rough go of it against the Chiefs, who have allowed the fewest fantasy points per game to running backs by a wide margin. They are number one with a bullet. So Irving had 7 carries, 24 yards, 3 catches for 10 yards. I think there might be a wee bit of recency bias with the ECR here after that disappointing performance. But Bucky has looked terrific this year. He's averaging 5 yards per carry. And I don't think Bucky Irving stakeholders should they should not be afraid of this matchup. As you mentioned, Welsh, 49ers defense, 19th in DVOA against the run. This is not the same sort of matchup Bucky faced against the Chiefs last week.
Well, and the type of running backs that do really well against the 49ers are guys like Bucky. But, if they're playing from behind and you've got coverage, focusing on Cade Otton, let's say like a Fred Warner, it does leave open opportunities where a guy like Rachaad White could maybe eat. Jacob, you are lower on Bucky Irving than ECR. Do you have this flipped where you are Rachaad over Bucky this week?
Yes, and I hate it. Bucky's my favorite running back in the NFL. I've been super high on him this year, so I really don't like to come on and represent a negative side with Bucky here. But yeah, I'm just a little bit worried about Tampa Bay. I do recognize that, the Niners have been easier to run on than the Chiefs. Hope for a better efficiency game from Bucky. But we do have to point out that he has 23, 44, and 24 rushing yards over his past 3 games. That's since Rachaad White has returned. 35, 42, and 35% snap rates for Bucky in those games. It's a short week of rest for Tampa Bay, whereas the Niners are coming off of their bye week. The Bucs, I think, don't have a great implied total, if I remember correctly, 22.5. That's middle of the pack. I don't know. There's a lot of game script things here that don't set up super well for Bucky and seem like maybe more of a Rachaad White type of a game. And until we see Bucky really get it going on the ground and building some momentum, I just feel a bit hesitant to put him in the lineup. And I've got him everywhere, and I've kind of backed off because it's like, unless he gets a touchdown or gets kind of lucky with the receptions, it's all coming down to his rushing, and the rushing really hasn't been there lately.
Yeah, and I think the thing that we're all kind of implying, not on the total, is that like if the Bucs are playing from behind, it's more of a Rachaad White game. And Niners coming off of a bye, Christian McCaffrey coming back. If they're getting ahead, that team is going to be throwing the ball a lot more. Not that Bucky doesn't get involved in the passing game. You just might see a bit more Rachaad White. It's a tough situation.
I did want to note that we've really seen the screen game become concentrated on Rachaad White and Bucky, which is dope. With Chris Godwin going down, I was curious where that would go. We've only seen 2 screens to Cade Otton over the past 2 weeks, whereas White has 5 and Bucky Irving has 4. And the Bucs are maybe the best screen offense in the NFL. I really love Liam Cohen's offense, and so that's a good note for both those guys.
Rachaad White reception total, always something fun to play with, and probably this week as well. The last one on this crew, let's talk about Ray Davis. Ray Davis made his fantasy worth on that one play this past week, and it's pushed him up to RB36. It's a really interesting crew that's at the bottom here of the 30s, by the way. You're looking at like the Algiers and the Etiennes and the Warren, just a bunch of people you don't trust. Amazing. We're still looking at Etienne, someone we just don't trust anymore. And then Ray Davis almost just kind of pokes his head in and just like, hey guys, I'm even less trustworthy. Even though he's this amazingly talented player, you just got to get more out of him. And he comes in at ECR 36. Jacob's got him at 36, but Pat, you've got him at 40 here. So is this as simple as like Ray Davis is super fun, but like he's got to do something with his 6 touches per game? Is that what this is about?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, I love the player, but aside from that week 6 game against the Jets where James Cook was out and Ray Davis rolled up over 150 yards from scrimmage, he has averaged 6 touches a game, Welsh, in all other games. So his snap shares the last 3 weeks, 24%, 22%, 14%. He doesn't even have the backup role to himself because the Bills also like to play Ty Johnson. One of Ray Davis's 6 touches last week went for 63 yards and a touchdown. It's just not the type of production I want to chase. And I realize it is a 4-team bye week. And some people are kind of looking at Ray Davis on their bench like, do I play for that big play and maybe put him in a flex spot? I'm at this position in a few leagues where I'm actually looking at Ray Davis like I might actually consider starting this guy, but man, you are just kind of chasing that long touchdown from last week. And when you're getting 6 touches a game, give or take, man, you need that big play to pay off because if you're doing it on volume alone, it could be a rough ride.
The simple story is running backs have stunk, especially depth at running back. It's something everybody thought we were going to be able to, like, every week we'll have 6 or 7 waiver guys and we'll just have this great time. And it's like, nope, after like 26, everything stinks. Jacob, is it as simple, love the player, hate the game with Ray Davis here?
For sure. I will say one of his touches was a goal line touch. And so like if you're going to bet on somebody random, maybe you bet on a Buffalo Bill. They've got 26 point implied total. They could get up big on the Colts and maybe Ray Davis gets a few more touches, but yeah, it's a really, really thin bet you're making here. Do
you, just quickly, Jacob, do you think that Etienne, when out there, is a tier difference above guys like Jaylen Warren, Ray Davis, Tyler Algier? Do you think he belongs in that range now?
No, I actually have Jaylen Warren above all of those guys. I don't know if we're going to talk about him or not. Etienne, I have quite a ways below just because the offense looks terrible. It's a really brutal matchup against Minnesota, maybe the toughest team to run on. He only had a 33% snap rate last week.
Yeah.
Maybe that goes up, but they were getting all 3 running backs involved.
Throw Jaylen Warren at us then real quick because we're inning out the RBs here. What's your take on Jaylen Warren then?
Yeah, he's been playing more, and I think he should be the healthiest he's been all year. It's been a frustrating year from a health standpoint, but they're coming out of the bye. I really like him as a talent, and he's got a matchup against Washington where you can run the ball against the Commanders. That's definitely been the case lately, and teams have really been focused more on the run game against the Commanders. I think that's probably exactly what we'll see from a coaching staff that likes to run the ball. Specifically, the Commanders have been really bad against man gap runs. We're getting really in the weeds here. But Jaylen Warren is one of the best running backs in the NFL on those types of runs. Not that the Steelers do that a lot. They're mostly a zone-heavy defense or offense, but they've leaned into more up-the-middle kind of runs lately, and I think Warren could gash them for a few big plays in this game.
Looking for a little bit of a deeper RB play at flex, then Jaylen Warren has got you covered. We have also got you covered with a weekly Start and Sit live stream right here on our YouTube channel, where you can come and ask your specific Start and Sit questions. We're here with you every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And for those listening on the podcast, just go to youtube.com/fantasypros, subscribe, notify, and you'll be right there whenever we have any of those live streams. Running backs in the books for Pat and Jacob. I'm Welsh. Thank you guys for hanging with us right here on the RB Rank Show.